So we've got State Representative Dave Maturen of the 63rd District, which encompasses the eastern part of Kalamazoo County and sort of the southern part of Calhoun County. Dave, it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
Looks like you're enjoying your summer.
Yeah, as much as I can. So.
Well, at least now that the campaign is over with, for heaven's sakes, that could put the damper on anybody's summer.
Yeah.
But you know, now you can relax for a couple of days and then get back to work for the home stretch on Tuesday.
Yeah, we got a couple days in the first part of September, and then a few weeks off, and then another week at the end of September, and then on and off till the election. And then after that, Katie bar the door with lame duck. So
yeah. You were telling me there's a 9/11 ceremony up there that you're looking forward to being part of.
well, yeah, it's something the House has done for the past 6 or 7 years now, and it's just a nice reflection. We get a chance to invite police, fire, first responders, EMTs, folks like that with us, and it's a chance to not only honor those folks that are going to be on the floor of the House or up in the gallery, but everybody in the state of Michigan that participates. You know, when we're running away from something, they're running towards it. So
Yep, and we'll be telling people about the local 9/11 ceremonies here in Battle Creek also coming up before you know it. We lost a great statesman, a great public servant, and Senator John McCain passed away over the weekend at age 81.
yeah, we sure did. He's a guy that had a lot of humility. You know, admitted he wasn't a perfect person, but he wasn't afraid to speak his mind and do what he thought was right. And I think that's admirable in today's politics.
And as we were saying right before the news, Nico and I were talking about him and said, you know, he was a guy who put the American people and his own beliefs ahead of the party lines a lot of times. Didn't really toe the party line, so they called him sort of a maverick.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that hurt or helped him in the long run, but I guess the same could be kind of said of you. You didn't always toe the party line here. You voted your conscience on certain issues.
I did. I thought it was well-reasoned votes. I told folks I didn't run for that office or this office for the next 4 months. I didn't run for this office to play follow the leader. I ran for it to do the best job I could for the 90,000 people I represent. So.
Yeah, and when your term ends, the end of the year, you'll be able to go do other things and you know, reflect back on you know, your political career, which you know, I mean, it started out at the grassroots level, and you know, the lowest. I don't mean to say lowest, but
Yeah.
Lowest has different meanings. But I mean, really, the most grassroots local level, and then all the way up to the state house. How will you reflect back on that career?
Well, you know, 30 years of public service, I think, is a pretty admirable thing. 14 in township, 12 on the county board, 3 as chair, and then 4 years in the House. So 30 years is probably enough for most folks, and I think it's enough for me. So.
Yeah, you gonna do some fun stuff this winter then, since you won't be driving to Lansing and back every day.
Yeah, I think being able to stay full time at our place down in Florida would be an admirable thing to do, and doing a little bit of traveling before that, going down to the southern hemisphere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, little trip to New Zealand and Australian Open. I've always wanted to check off the four tennis opens, and I got 2 more to do. This will be the 3rd one. See if I can make the French Open in the spring.
My goodness, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Man, I'd love to go down there. Right? It only takes about 2 days to get there, and maybe 3 to get back.
Yeah, it really messes with you, but it's actually they have I'm not taking it, but they have a direct flight now from Chicago to Auckland.
Oh yeah,
16 hours on a plane.
Not bad, not bad. They're getting there.
I'm going to do a little different West Coast shuffle, but nonetheless, it's a long hike, so hopefully we'll stick around there for quite a few days and maybe get acclimated to the time zone. So
we've got an election coming up in November when the voters will decide some of the races. They'll also decide on an awful lot of ballot proposals. Have you ever seen this many? There probably have been, but I don't remember this many.
I think a few years ago there's quite a few, and I know the tack from some of the organizations, entities was just simply vote no on all of them, and I think that's pretty much what happened. Um,
Mm.
we've got a couple that are still being, I guess, kicked around in the courts as to whether it's applicable or not. I know some appeals have been filed on some of these things. I'm not quite sure where the end game is with all of them. The voters, not politicians, the redistricting proposal, that's actually a constitutional amendment that's going to go to the people. Decide how they want the lines to be drawn. Are they drawn by essentially the party in power, or are they drawn by and I guess they're going to have to make their case before the people, but an impartial body. So we'll see where that one goes.
Some sort of a panel of 12 or 13 people that are chosen from various political parties
Yeah,
somehow.
I think some from some Republicans, some Democrats, and then some independents, people that aren't political at all, not related to anybody. It's going to be really interesting to figure out who these people are, because I think they're going to be drawn at random from a voter
Yeah.
list. So it'll be interesting to see, again, what kind of case those folks can make for that. I know there's kind of a movement around the country to take away the alleged partisanship from drawing lines. And I know Florida does that. They have different folks will submit different proposals to the court, and the court will pick the one they think is the most equitable. So this is a little different from that, but
Any thoughts about this so far? Is it going to be an improvement, or is it just going to be another muddy thing?
I'm not sure. I think the folks that are proposing it at least think that it'll be more equitable. We'll have more balanced districts that don't lean completely one way or another. It's pretty hard to do. You look around Detroit; it's pretty much a Democratic area. You're not going to
Yeah.
get much of a split there. But I can take a look at one of the Brett Roberts represents a district that's got two townships in Eaton County. Then it wanders down into Jackson, wanders around the city, and then pops down into Hillsdale. I mean, that's a pretty strange looking district. Mine is, I guess, fairly compact, although it did change with the last redistricting.
Yeah. You used to have a horseshoe or kind of a weird thing around the bottom of Calhoun County, didn't
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and then they redistricted, I think, for Jace Bolger's last term. Um, so we'll see. We'll see how that one shakes out. I think some of the districts are pretty. I mean, you look at Kalamazoo County from a Senate perspective. It's just the entirety of the county. I mean, you can't get much more specific than that, and I think that's a reasonable thing to do. It's a
Sure.
geographic destination. It's an economic destination, that kind of stuff. Not destination, but designation. But we'll kind of see where these things end up. There'll be a lot of between now and November. I'm sure a lot of folks on both sides of the issue trying to make their case to the electorate.
What's your thought about the recreational marijuana push and proposal?
I think it's something that the legislature had the opportunity to take up, and we didn't. So it's going to be on the ballot. A lot of folks seem to think that that's kind of like Wild Wild West the way it's written. But again, we'll let the proponents and the opponents make their case. For should we do it or shouldn't we? It's interesting that we passed the medical marijuana back in 2008. It only took us a decade to start writing rules, and still that is a big quagmire. You got 600 people in line that want to have one of the 5 designations for the growing and the processing and the testing and the dispensaries, and they've only approved like 40 so far. So it's going to, in my opinion, take forever to get everybody through that line that wants to do one of those, have one of those 5 licenses. And then you got the cities that will enact an ordinance, but they've got to get the preliminary approval from the state first. So it's still kind of a mess. This will kind of do away with all of that, I think. And just there you go.
It'll all be a moot point, pretty much. Yeah, if it passes, and your colleague, Representative Dr. John Bison, vehemently opposed it when we had him on the show last week. Really thinks this would be a mistake for Michigan.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I was hoping that we would have taken that up like we did with prevailing wage and taken it up and had the opportunity to at least modify it and bring some sort of a regulatory scheme to it. And from what I understand, it's just kind of like Wild Wild West. But
It
Well,
tells me that the legislature didn't take it up, so they must figure there's a lot of people in Michigan that support it. And they didn't want to have to be dealing with the consequences of making that decision.
you know, that's I guess it's kind of water over the dam, but you know, it's an opportunity that was missed. I think, in my opinion, simply giving us a chance to at least put some regulatory framework in place.
Yeah.
It's not going to be there. So.
Yeah, I want to talk about groundwater and PFAS when we come back in a minute. What we've done so far, what you think we need to do. It's a growing concern, especially right there. Right here in Battle Creek, we've had some wells that have turned some up, but over in Parchment, which is very close to us, we're seeing even more of it. So. State Representative Dave Maturen is with us from 63rd District. The session begins again on Tuesday, and we've got an election in there, and then that final couple of months or 6 or 7 weeks, they call that a lame duck session, right?
It is, yeah.
Any you expect very much to happen in there?
You know, I think it just depends on what issues what's taken up by the legislature as far as some of these amendments go. That could impact it. Depends on how the election goes. Do the Republicans maintain the majority? Or if not, you know, they may look at it and say, hey, this is our last chance to get some stuff through. So it just depends. What happens in November, I think, is going to have a fairly major impact on what issues are taken up in November and December. So
sure, yeah. What about the groundwater in Michigan and PFAS? I mean, what has the state legislature done so far regarding this whole issue?
well, you know, I think Michigan is one of the leaders among in the nation as far as recognizing the fact that this stuff does exist. We're actually taking the bull by the horns. We've done some testing. As soon as we got the idea that this PFAS was impacting our drinking water, we put together the PFAS Action Response Team, MPART, and it's pulling together all the agencies to see what's out there, what can be done about it. We put $60 million immediately into the issue. I know that folks in my district and everybody's district, anywhere. The folks that are on in Parchment and Cooper, they're on a municipal system. So once they get that flushed out of the existing system and hook up to Kalamazoo, they're okay. Folks on wells in Richland, there's a fair amount of people who are on wells downstream from the old plating plant, which is one of the reasons they got city water, municipal water in Richland. Well, there's still folks on wells, and there's still folks around Parchment, that area that are on wells. So they're given the opportunity to get a filter for that. Put that filter on their drinking water and hopefully resolve the issue. But folks have been drinking this stuff for a long time, and we've gotten to the point where we're able to test. It used to be parts per million, then parts per billion. Now it's parts per trillion. And when I attended the Richland meeting a month or so ago, it was noted that the feds kind of had a recommendation looking at this whole issue of 400 parts per trillion. They said, well, let's make it 350. And they said, look, to be really, really safe, why don't we take just 20% of that and call it 70 parts per trillion? Now, a lot of folks are still concerned that that's still too high a level. So I know on the federal level, there's been legislation introduced to have, the EPA actually come up with a number. I know Michigan's looking at the same thing. What's safe, what's not? But folks have been drinking this stuff for quite a while, and again, without the knowledge that it's there.
Yeah.
So we're doing testing, and amazing what happens when you test stuff, and you got the ability now to go to parts per trillion. I mean, that's pretty small. So
very scary though when these stories break, and the first thing you wonder is, well, okay, this is my area. How long have I been drinking this? Is it gonna? Has it already affected my family and my health, and will it impact it in the future?
Well, those are some of the questions I know the folks in Richland had, and obviously the folks around here in Calhoun County and all of Kalamazoo County, and you look at the rest of the state, Oscoda, Wordsmith Air Force Base, anywhere there's been a major use of firefighting foam. That's certainly an issue. I know the state has put in place, we got several bills introduced now to prohibit the use of PFAS type foam in training sessions. making reporting of any PFAS release, I think within 48 hours. So we've got a couple of bills that are in the hopper right now. I believe, and I said on the Natural Resources Committee that our Chairman Gary Howell is going to take this issue up and get to the get to the heart of the issue. There's allegedly some report out by somebody in the Department of Environmental Quality, I believe, that kind of raised a flag a few years ago. What is the response to that? Is it something that should have been taken up, or did they want more information? Um, I think part of the problem is that you don't want to rush off. You want to make sure you got the data. And sometimes I know people want an answer, I want it now, I want it now. But it takes time, especially when you're dealing with stuff that's underground, to figure out where the plume is. But then not only that, but what is an acceptable level? What can we do about it? How do we clean it up if possible? But it all takes time to get that data. So I know that folks in the state of Michigan and various departments are working as hard, as rapidly as they can to get answers. But again, some of these things just take time, and I know people want to get it done. So,
And your trade is property appraisal. How much does that impact a property? Like, say you got a nice house and property in
yeah.
Richland that's on a well. I mean, how much does that affect it?
I would think it would be substantial. I've done some studies over the years with some analyses of various and contaminated sites. And initially, well, it's just like when we had the Enbridge whole issue on the Kalamazoo River.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to try to sell your house a day after that huge rainstorm and all of the oil slick, I mean, it would be hard pressed to find somebody, or they'd want a major discount, Now you
Sure.
look a couple of years after when it's been cleaned up, and my analysis of that whole issue would be, and I've done some studies there and looked at some sales before and after, and there's no impact now, or minimal, marginal impact at all. But boy, until the thing gets cleaned up and until people get better knowledge of it, there's a huge detriment. So what you don't want to do is be alarmist to cause a crash in the real estate market, but you also want to be cautious enough and make sure that the buyers are aware of it, the market's aware of it, and hope you don't have to sell the day after the news flash comes up. So
Yeah, that is tough. Well, State Representative Dave Maturen, thanks for dropping in this morning, and we'll wish you well here on your weekend before you have to get back for one final push in Lansing, and we'll talk to you again next month. Okay?
always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right.